Tree Grows in Brooklyn, Chapter 35. Once more it was the week before Christmas. Francie had just had her 14th birthday. Neely, as he put it, was waiting to turn 13 any moment. It looked as though it wasn't going to be such a good Christmas. There was something wrong with Johnny. Johnny wasn't drinking. There had been other times, of course, when Johnny had stopped drinking, but that was when he was working. Now he wasn't drinking at all, and he wasn't working. And the wrong thing about Johnny was that he wasn't drinking, but he was acting like he was drinking. He hadn't spoken to his family in more than 2 weeks. Francie remembered the last time Papa had said anything to her that night, when he came home sober singing the last verse of Molly Malone. Come to think of it, he hadn't sung since that night either. He came and went without speaking. He stayed out late nights and came home sober, and nobody knew where he spent that time. His hands were trembling badly. He could hardly hold the fork when he ate, and suddenly he looked very old. Yesterday he had come in while they were eating supper. He looked at them as though he were going to say something. Instead of speaking, however, he closed his eyes for a second and then went into the bedroom. He had no regular hours for anything. He came and went at odd hours of the day and night. When he was home, he spent the time lying on his bed, fully closed with his eyes shut. Katie went around white and quiet. There was a foreboding about her, as though she were carrying tragedy within herself. Her face was thin, and there were hollows under her cheeks, but her body was fuller. She had taken on an extra job in this week before Christmas. She got up earlier and worked faster at her flat cleaning, and was finished in early afternoon. She rushed down to Gorling's, the department store at the Polish end of Grand Street, where she worked from 4 to 7, serving coffee and sandwiches to the salesgirls who were not allowed to take time to go out for supper on account of the Christmas rush. Her family desperately needed that 75 cents that she earned each day. It was nearly 7 o'clock. Neely had come home from his paper route, and Francie was back from the library. There was no fire in the flat. They had to wait until Mama came home with some money with which to buy a bundle of wood. The children wore their coats and zipful caps, as it was very cold in the flat. Francie saw that Mama had wash on the line, and she pulled it in. The garments had frozen into grotesque shapes and didn't want to come in through the window. "Here, let me at 'em," said Neely, referring to a frozen suit of underwear. The legs of the long drawers had frozen in a spread-out position, and Neely's struggles did no good. "I'll break the damn thing's legs," said Francie. She whacked it fiercely, and it crackled and collapsed. She pulled it in viciously. She looked like Katie at that moment. "Francie? Huh? You cursed." "I know it." "God heard you." "Oh, shoot." "Yes, he did. He sees and hears everything." "Neely, do you believe that he looks right into this little old room?" "You betcha he does." "Don't you believe it, Neely. He's too busy watching all the little sparrows fall and worrying about whether the little buds will burst into flowers to have time to investigate us." "Don't talk like that, Francie." "I will so. If he went around looking into people's windows like you say, he'd see how things were here. He'd see that it was cold and that there was no food in the house. He'd see that Mama isn't strong enough to work so hard. And he'd see how Papa was, and he'd do something about Papa. Yes, he would." "Francie." The boy looked around the room uneasily. Francie saw that he was uneasy. "I'm getting too big to tease him," she thought. Aloud she said, "All right, Neely." They talked about other things until Katie came home. Katie came in with a rush. She had a bundle of wood blocks which she had bought for 2 cents, a can of condensed milk, and 3 bananas in a bag. She stuffed paper and the wood into the range and had a fire going in no time. "Well, children, I guess we'll have oatmeal for supper tonight." "Again?" groaned Francie. "It won't be so bad," said Mama. "We have condensed milk, and I bought bananas to slice on top." "Mama," ordered Neely, "don't mix my condensed milk with the oatmeal. Let it stay on top." "Slice the bananas and cook them with the oatmeal," suggested Francie. "I want to eat my banana whole," protested Neely. Mama settled the argument. "I'll give you each a banana, and you eat it the way you want." When the oatmeal was cooked, Katie filled 2 soup plates full, set them on the table, punched 2 holes in the can of milk, and set a banana by each plate. Aren't you going to eat, Mama? Asked Neely. I'll eat after. I'm not hungry now, Katie sighed. Francie said, Mama, if you don't feel like eating, why don't you play the piano so it's like a restaurant while we're eating? It's cold in the front room. Light the oil stove, chorused the children. All right. Katie took a portable stove from the cupboard. Only you know I don't play so good. You play grand, Mama, said Francie sincerely. Katie was pleased. She knelt to light the oil stove. What do you want me to play? Come, Little Leaves, called Francie. Welcome, sweet springtime, shouted Neely. I'll play Little Leaves first, decided Mama, because I didn't give Francie a birthday present. She went into the cold front room. I think I'll slice my banana on top of my oatmeal. I'll slice it very thin so that there's a whole lot of it, said Francie. I'm going to eat mine whole, decided Neely, and slow so that it lasts a long time. Mama was playing Francie's song now. It was one that Mr. Morton had taught the children. She sang to the music. Come, little leaves, said the wind one day. Come o'er the meadows with me and play. Put on your dresses of red and gold. Oh, that's a baby song, interrupted Neely. Francie stopped singing. When Katie finished Francie's song, she started to play Rubinstein's Melody in F. Mr. Morton had taught them that song too, calling it Welcome Sweet Springtime. Neely started to sing, Welcome Sweet Springtime, we greet thee in song. His voice changed suddenly from a tenor to a bass on the high note in song. Francie giggled, and soon Neely was giggling so much that he couldn't sing. You know what Mama would say if she was sitting here now, asked Francie. What? She'd say spring'll be here before you know it. They laughed. Christmas is coming soon, commented Neely. Remember when we were children, said Francie, who had just finished being 13, how we used to smell if Christmas was coming? Let's see if we can still smell it, Neely said impulsively. He opened the window a crack and put his nose up to it. Yep. What does it smell like? I smell snow. Remember how when we were kids we used to look up at the sky and holler, Feather boy, shake down some feathers from the sky. And when it snowed, we thought that there was a feather boy up there. Let me smell, she asked suddenly. She put her nose to the crack. Yes, I can smell it. It smells like orange peels and Christmas trees put together. They closed the window. I never snitched on you that time you got the doll when you said your name was Mary. No, Francie said gratefully, and I didn't tell on you either, the time you made a cigarette out of coffee grounds, and when you smoked it, the paper caught fire and fell on your blouse and burned a big hole in it. I helped you hide it. You know, mused Neely, Mama found that blouse and sewed a patch over the hole, and she never asked me about it. Mama's funny, said Francie. They pondered a while over their mother's inscrutable ways. The fire was dying down now, but the kitchen was still warm. Neely sat on top of the far end of the stove where it wasn't so hot. Mama had warned him that he'd get piles from sitting on a hot stove. But Neely didn't care. He liked his backside to be warm. The children were almost happy. The kitchen was warm and they were fed, and Mama's playing music made them feel safe and comfortable. They reminisced about past Christmases, or as Francie put it, they talked about olden times. While they were talking, someone pounded on the door. It's Papa, said Francie. No, Papa always sings coming up the stairs so we know it's him. Neely, Papa hasn't sung coming home since that night. Let me in, shouted Johnny, and he beat on the door as though he would break it down. Mama came running out of the front room. Her eyes looked very dark in her white face. She opened the door. Johnny lunged in. They stared at him. They'd never seen Papa looking like that. He was always so neat, and now his tuxedo jacket was dirty as though he had been lying in the gutter, and his derby hat was bashed in. He didn't own an overcoat or gloves. His cold red hands were trembling. He lunged to the table. No, I'm not drunk, he said. Nobody said, began Katie. At last I'm through with it. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. He pounded the table. They knew he was speaking the truth. I haven't touched a drop since that night, he broke off suddenly. But no one would believe me anymore. No one. There, Johnny, said Mama soothingly. What's the matter, Papa? Asked Francie. Shh, don't bother your father, said Mama. She spoke to Johnny. There's coffee left from this morning, Johnny. It's nice and hot, and we've got milk tonight. I was waiting until you came home so that we could eat together. She poured the coffee. We ate already, said Neely. Hush, Mama told him. She put the milk into the coffee and sat opposite Johnny. "Drink it, Johnny, while it's hot." Johnny stared at the cup. Suddenly he pushed it from him, and Katie drew a sharp breath as it clattered to the floor. Johnny buried his head in his arms and sobbed shudderingly. Katie went to him. "What's the matter, Johnny? What's the matter?" she asked soothingly. Finally he sobbed out. "They threw me out of the waiters' union today. They said I was a bum and a drunk. They said they'd never give me another job as long as I live." He controlled his sobs for a moment, and his voice was frightened as he said, "As long as I live!" He wept bitterly. "They wanted me to turn in my union button." He put his hand over the tiny green and white button he wore in his lapel. Francie's throat got tight as she remembered how often he said he wore it like an ornament, a rose. He was so proud to be a union man. "But I wouldn't give it up," he sobbed. "That's nothing, Johnny. You just get a good rest and get on your feet again. They'll be glad to take you in. You're a good waiter and the best singer they've got." "I'm no good anymore. I can't sing anymore, Katie. They laugh at me now when I sing. The last few jobs I had, they hired me to give the people a laugh. It's come to that now. I'm finished." He sobbed wildly, as he sobbed as though he'd never stop. Francie wanted to run into the bedroom and hide her head under the pillow. She edged towards the door. Mama saw her. "Stay here," she said sharply. She spoke to Papa again. "Come on, Johnny. Rest a while and you'll feel better. The oil stove is lit, and I'll put it in the bedroom and it'll be nice and warm. I'll sit with you until you fall asleep." She put her arms around him. Gently he put her arms away and went into the bedroom alone, sobbing more quietly. Katie spoke to the children. "I'm going to stay with Papa for a while. Keep on talking or whatever you're doing." The children stared at her numbly. "What are you looking at me like that for?" Her voice broke. "Nothing's the matter." They looked away. She went into the front room to get the oil stove. Francie and Neely did not look at each other for a long time. Finally he said, "Do you want to talk about olden times?" "No," said Francie.